Welcome to the Authority Podcast, Plumbing and Mechanical. When talking about the built environment, we would do well to remember, we shape our buildings, and afterwards, our buildings shape us. Therefore, on each episode, we'll discuss the latest trends from IAPMO in plumbing and mechanical safety, sustainability, and resiliency. Join me, your host, Christoph Lohr, and together we'll explore the ways we can make our buildings shape us for the better. And welcome back to the Authority Podcast, Plumbing and Mechanical. In this episode, we talk with Kurt Steenhoek, International Representative of the United Association of Journeymen and Apprentices of the Plumbing and Pipe Fitting Industry. Mr. Steenhoek discusses the importance of the emerging science on water quality and why it is vital for plumbing installers to have training in this topic. He will also dive into the specifics of a key new certification the plumbing industry should be aware of, the ASSE 12061, among other certifications. After discussing how building owners and plumbing engineers can also reference and utilize this certification on their buildings and projects, the conversation will conclude with an overview of all the ASSE 12,000 series certifications and their importance. Kurt, really glad to have you on the podcast.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. So let's jump into this. One of the big pieces that has kind of caused a lot of the need for this training is, especially from my observation, water quality. So why is water quality becoming more of an important of a topic for plumbers today to understand?
Yeah, thank you, Christoph. It's great to be here. After Flint, I guess, is where we really kind of dove in, and we had a lot of people in the field there and working on the water quality when they had issues. And that was the point where we decided, hey, we need to take a look at this from a trades perspective. And we had to ask ourselves, do we belong in this space? And do we need to be able to figure out how to get the tradespeople and the contractors into this space to make better water quality in the future? And the answer was yes.
So as more and more facilities, particularly healthcare facilities, begin requiring training and certification for infection control, could you touch on and explain why, in layman's terms, specifically the ASSE 12061 certification is important? How does it fit into that overall infection prevention?
Yeah, you bet. So when we took a look at this as a pilot program and found out what was really out there in the water, in the buildings and in the facilities, we decided we would take a look at the ASSE 12,000 series because we were already working in it, in the medical gas field and other fields inside these facilities already. So it fit into that model. So we opened up the series, we developed the training program, we developed the book, and then we decided that we needed to have several different series in that. Because when we took a look at the building and we took a look at the mandates that were coming out from CMS and from Medicare and Medicaid, it said all building systems. So we took a look at that and we did plumbing, we did HVAC, we even took a look at the piping within, the sprinkler failures. And, it's astonishing what's come out of that.
So we've started the conversation with ASSE 12061, but my understanding is that 12061 is part of a larger series. Is there other similar standards in that particular series that are aimed at preventing outbreaks due to Legionella and other pathogens? And can you talk about maybe the specific numbers and naming and some of the specifics of those?
Absolutely, yeah. So the series of the 12,060 series is really it's 12,060, and that is the contractor. So the contractor that's working in these facilities already, doing the design work, doing the installation, doing the remodels, we needed to have them certified, and they needed to know what they were doing in this space to be able to estimate it, to be able to work with the engineers, and to be able to work with the hospital facility folks and other building facilities, to get them to understand what they were looking at when they were estimating it and delivering it. And then after that, we had the 61, which is the plumber, which takes in consideration of all the plumbing systems. That is good water in and good water out. When we look at Legionella, we look at, a holistic approach, and we want to find out, where is this coming from? It's not just a specific area where we had the outbreak, but where is it coming from, and how do we stop it, and how do we manage it going forward? So we looked at that, and we're training the plumbers and the plumbing systems for that. If we take a look at the HVAC side, we saw it in the cooling towers and the ice machines and different areas of that nature. And so then we developed the training modules for the HVAC piping and the heating and the air conditioning piping as well. So that was that. And then we started looking at the other system that we do in the UA, is our sprinkler fitters. And, a lot of times these have, their own designated line coming into the buildings, and it sits there stagnated, and, they have blowdowns and they have different testing procedures that they have to do. Well, that exposes people, because that water's been sitting there for a long, long time. People don't really realize or think about it, but you're exposing people in the workplace, and you're exposing people in the buildings, because these are occupied buildings when they're doing this. So we trained them to specifically handle that in their system as well.
Is there any other?
Theirs is a 60. So 60 is the contractor, 61 is the plumber, 12,062 is the HVAC, and 12,063 is the sprinkler fitter.
That's a really good breakdown. Is there any other series that have been developed similar to those ones?
Yeah, once we went through the pandemic following all this, we started looking at air quality. And so it was really important to building occupants and owners, to take a look at that, and how are we going to design that. So we put together a specific 12,050. So we reopened the infectious control 12,000 series, and we developed the training module for the contractors 12,050, and then the HVAC technician, the people that are working, in the air delivery systems, in the 12,051. So
that's fascinating. So you really have covered the whole breadth of, in terms of air and water inside the built environment then.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we put it in simple terms like this: is back in the 90s, before we had certifications and installation certifications for medical gas, there was all kinds of cross connections, and people were having problems, and people were dying on the table. And, we had to figure out a way to tackle that. And at that point, one good point is that, we didn't have anybody certified. Today, we have 100,000 people certified in medical gas, and we're protecting the health and safety inside those facilities, inside dental offices, inside anywhere you're getting delivery of medical gas, vacuum systems, and everything. They're being designed and installed, much safer to these standards. That series kind of opened up, the 12,000 in the infectious disease control and construction with ICRA. And then, over time, these things just expose themselves to where we help develop some of those from our perspective, and brought a lot of professionals to the table to help develop these as well.
That's so fascinating. And I really like that comparison to the medical gas side, which obviously has had a lot of success in making medical gas systems safer. Going back to the ASSE 12,061. So going back to the ASSE 12,061 certification, what are the most important components as part of that certification specifically?
So I think the most important is we look at control points, and we look at risk factors, and we take every building that's occupancy as the different risk factors. If you have immune compromised folks in healthcare systems or in nursing homes, that their risk factor is a lot more, because they have more, to their immune system is more compromised. So we break those down, and then what we do is we take a look and we figure out, what is the water coming in, and we take a look at that and say, what's being delivered from the water purveyor, and then where is this Legionella, where is this other bacteria, where is it growing, and where do we need to tackle it so it doesn't become a problem. So then it becomes an ongoing maintenance of the system. Once you get it all mapped out, then your value comes back down. So it's an initial investment doing this, but you find out where the Legionella is, The other thing we do is we find out where you might have dead ends, and you might have piping that needs to be repiped. The other thing that's nice is in the design stage, we can work with the engineers and we can help them design systems that can continuously flow. And so we don't have dead legs, so we don't have the problem areas that we're finding. And so the future, it's going to be much better on the design side as well, working with contractors that are certified in this and the installers that are certified with the engineers, because that's really what it's about. It's a full spectrum of all of us working together.
I think that really looking at it from top to bottom and working together, I think it's a really important part in terms of who's getting the certification. Is it just the plumbing installers, and then what does it take to get certified?
So, we have the 12,000 series. The installers get certified, the contractors get certified, but we also there's 12,080 series that you know about. And so these are facility folks that are getting certified, so they have knowledge of what they need to do internally inside their buildings too. So we had worked with some infectious disease control people when we first started, and they were actually going down developing their own series, and we worked together to develop this 12,080 in there as well, which it's really a good model. I mean, it touches everybody that has any responsibility or anybody that has access to those systems.
And who should get certified, and how do they get certified?
So generally what you're going to do is you're going to take the contractors. It's a 40-hour class to start with. So or not a 40-hour. I'm sorry. Let me go back on that point. So to get certified for a contractor, you go to a 4-hour class and you take a 50-question test, and you learn that. The Journey people take a 12-hour class, and then they take a 100-question test, and they need to pass that. And then that certification is good for 3 years, and then they get recertified on a recertification for continuing education.
Excellent. That's a really good breakdown. Now, it seems like a lot of it focuses on the plumbing installer. What should other plumbing industry professionals, like engineers or building owners, or others that work on these systems from outside the installation side, understand about the ASSE 12,061 and the other 12,000 and 12,050 series?
I think, from a perspective of the 12,060, that's a pretty short class. A lot of times if we're giving that class, we'll bring in building owners and stuff and let them listen to that first 4 hours. And they don't really need to get certified in that. But then if they want to get to a deeper dive, they can take the 12,080 series and understand, why all these others are important to work, within that building. So design professionals and professionals that work, in the facility maintenance folks, would really behoove them to have the 12,080.
And then what should they understand about the certifications that are geared towards the installer, like the 12,061? Is there anything that they should consider as part of their process as far as looking at that 12,061?
Yeah, I think the nice part is that if you take a look at the mandate from CMS, the Medicare and Medicaid mandate, that you have to have a water management program within your facility. These certifications were first designed around the hospital settings, because we felt if we get the most immune compromised settings and the most highly contagious ones that can really hurt people, then every other building below that is just going to be taken care of no matter what. So you can train to that, and it applies to all buildings. But to have the knowledge for them to understand what the tradespeople look for and how important it is, that's a good deal. I mean, if you understand why you're hiring somebody to do this, it's pretty simple math.
Yeah, that makes sense. I remember seeing something as part of the preparations for our podcast here, that the ASSE engineering methodologies to reduce the risk of Legionella, one of the recommendations in there was for the engineer to include an ASSE 12061 certifications in their specifications, as a requirement for the contractors. Any thoughts on that in terms of good recommendation or any additional context or anything on that?
I think when we took a look at developing our system, we looked at these mandates, but we also looked at what is ASHRAE, doing on 514 and 188. And we put that right in our training module. So what the engineers are looking at, we put that directly in there. So we're all speaking the same language, whether you're designing and understanding, or whether you're installing and understanding, or maintaining and understanding, that's that common basis there with the ASHRAE documents. And that really helps because we're all working from the same platform of standards.
Excellent. Well, to wrap up our conversation today, I like to ask the question because it's a little bit of a tricky one. In one word, how would you summarize your conversation with me today?
Informative. I think, that's what I want to do. I want to inform people about this problem, and we're here to help them.
Excellent. Well, on behalf of the Authority Podcast Plumbing Mechanical and IATMO, Kurt, I just want to say thank you so much for your time and for sharing your expertise and insights with myself and our audience. Thank you for joining us on this week's episode of the Authority Podcast, Plumbing and Mechanical. Love this episode of the podcast? Head over to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Please follow us on Instagram at IAPMO, on LinkedIn at IAPMO, or email us at iatmo@iatmo.org. Join us next time for another episode of the Authority Podcast, Plumbing and Mechanical. And in the meantime, let's work together to make our buildings more resilient and shape us for the better.